In the silent halls of a convent in rural Iowa, something unholy stirred. It wasn't just a scream that broke the silence, it was a deep, guttural cry that seemed to tear through the walls of reality itself. The air turned cold. Crucifixes trembled. And what happened inside that convent over the next 23 days would go down as one of the most horrifying and well-documented exorcisms in American history. She vomited nails. She levitated. She spoke in languages she had never learned. And through it all, an unbearable stench, of death, filth, and decay, clung to the room like a living thing. This is not a Hollywood script. This is the real-life story of Emma Schmidt, better known by her alias, Anna Eklund. A woman whose soul, many believed, was under siege by something not just dark, but purely evil. Emma Schmidt was born in the late 19th century in a devout German Catholic family in the Midwest United States. Her life, at first glance, was ordinary. But beneath the surface, a spiritual battle was brewing, one that would span decades and culminate in one of the most terrifying exorcisms ever recorded. She first began showing signs of possession when she was just 14 years old. It started subtly, resistance to entering churches, physical revulsion to holy water, and sudden outbursts of blasphemy. Over time, her symptoms became harder to ignore. She would scream at priests. Objects around her would move without explanation. Her appetite changed. Her personality darkened. Her family, deeply religious and afraid, turned to the church for help. Emma's early exorcisms in her teenage years were short-lived and only mildly effective. The symptoms would disappear for a time, but they always returned, stronger, darker, and more violent. By the time Emma reached her mid-40s, it was clear this was no passing affliction. Something was growing inside her, something ancient and malevolent. Her condition escalated to the point where normal life became impossible. Her family and local clergy sought out Father Theophilus Reisinger, a Capuchin monk and one of the few trained exorcists in the United States at the time. He had performed exorcisms before, but nothing could have prepared him for what he would face in Ulling, Iowa. On August 18, 1928, Emma Schmidt was brought to a Franciscan convent in Ulling, a small town in western Iowa. The location was chosen for its isolation. The nuns there were sworn to secrecy. No one outside those walls was to know what would unfold over the next 3 weeks. From the moment she arrived, strange phenomena began to occur. She refused food that had been secretly blessed. She would snarl like an animal at the sight of a crucifix. Her voice changed, at times deep and growling, other times high-pitched and mocking. She spoke in Latin, German, and even Aramaic, languages she had never studied. Witnesses said the room would suddenly reek of rotting flesh and sulfur, even when nothing physical had changed. Her strength became unnatural, taking multiple people to restrain her. And then came the inexplicable events, levitation, unnatural contortions, and the vomiting of strange objects, including nails, pins, and what some claimed were fragments of bone. Emma's case would go on to be recognized as one of the most thoroughly documented exorcisms of the 20th century. Even years after the event, theologians, paranormal scholars, and psychologists continued to study the reports, trying to find rational explanations. But for those who were in the room, the priests, the nuns, and the witnesses, there was no doubt, they had stared into the face of something inhuman. Her story was eventually featured in Time magazine in 1936, and today, it is still referenced by exorcists around the world as a chilling example of what can happen when the spiritual world collides violently with the human. But what happened next? What did the demons say? Who, or what, did they claim to be? The answers are even more disturbing. And in part 2, we'll go deeper into the horrors that unfolded during those 23 days, into the confessions from beyond, the physical torment Emma endured, and the terrifying moment when the priests realized, they weren't facing just one entity. They were facing many. Unraveling the true identity of Emma Schmidt, the woman behind one of the most terrifying exorcism cases in American history, is like opening a box inside a box, each layer more mysterious than the last. Public accounts and numerous publications have long claimed that Emma Schmidt, whose pseudonym was Anna Eklund, was born on March 23, 1882, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She was reportedly raised in a devout Catholic household in Marathon, Wisconsin, a quiet town where the rhythms of faith and farming define daily life. This version of her biography paints a picture of a relatively normal upbringing, until, that is, the strange symptoms of demonic possession began to manifest in her early teenage years. But here's where things get murky. This well-known biographical trail leads us to someone named Edward Schmidt, said to be Emma's father. Yet this detail immediately throws up a red flag. According to both eyewitness testimonies and historical records surrounding the possession and exorcisms, Emma's father was named Jacob, not Edward. This single discrepancy might seem minor, until you realize that in stories of spiritual warfare, even the names carry weight. And when records don't line up, questions begin to form. Were we following the wrong Emma all along? Digging deeper into historical and genealogical archives, particularly Ancestry.com, where birth, immigration, and death records lie waiting, researchers may have stumbled upon a truer match. This woman's name? Hulda Emma Schmidt. Hulda was born on July 3, 1882, in Thurgau, Switzerland, a small canton near the German border. She was the daughter of Jacob and Anna Schmidt, which aligns far more closely with the details passed down in reports of Emma's possession. In 1884, when Hulda was just a toddler, the Schmidt family emigrated from Switzerland to the United States, eventually settling in Wisconsin. This version of Emma, or Hulda, was one of 9 children, a large Catholic family, devout in faith, and no stranger to hardship. She lived out her final years in Milwaukee, passing away on June 23, 1964, at the age of 81. If this Hulda Emma Schmidt was indeed the woman who battled demonic forces for nearly her entire life, then her story spans not only decades of torment but also an ocean of mystery, one that begins in the quiet countryside of Switzerland and ends in a hospital room in America. The confusion surrounding her identity is more than just a historical hiccup. It speaks to a deeper truth about cases like this. They exist on the thin edge between fact and folklore, documented history and whispered legend. Even now, almost a century later, tracing the origins of Emma Schmidt is like navigating a foggy road. You can see shapes, shadows, outlines, but nothing is ever fully clear. Some skeptics argue that the conflicting biographies discredit the entire story. Others claim that the hidden identity only strengthens the case, preserving Emma's dignity while allowing theologians, psychologists, and paranormal researchers to investigate one of the most documented cases of possession without exploiting the real-life woman behind it. But whoever Emma Schmidt truly was, whether born in Milwaukee or Switzerland, daughter of Edward or Jacob, what remains chillingly clear is this: she endured something so terrifying, so unexplainable, that the Catholic Church, multiple eyewitnesses, and even journalists felt compelled to record it. Her 1928 exorcism in Ulling, Iowa, still stands as one of the longest, most disturbing, and most mysterious exorcisms ever performed on American soil. And her story was only just beginning. The deeper we dive into the haunting tale of Emma Schmidt, the murkier the waters become. Even her origins are shrouded in mystery. According to official Wisconsin birth records, both of Emma's parents were German immigrants, yet this isn't the only version of her early life. Some sources challenge the widely accepted narrative that she was raised in Marathon, Wisconsin. Instead, the unpublished Bunce manuscript, a lesser-known but significant source, places key events elsewhere, claiming that Father Theophilus Reisinger actually performed Emma's earlier exorcisms in Milwaukee. This same manuscript reveals a crucial detail: Emma, who is also referred to under the alias Mary X, first met Father Reisinger in New York when she was just 16 years old, around the year 1898. That's a long way from Wisconsin. And if true, it suggests that the roots of her possession, and her connection to Reisinger, began far earlier than the infamous 1928 exorcism. Adding to the confusion, a 1928 article from the Des Moines Register reported that Emma was brought to Ulling, Iowa, from an eastern city, by Reverend Joseph Steiger, pastor of St. Joseph's Church. If accurate, this further contradicts the Wisconsin theory and implies she may have lived somewhere on the East Coast before arriving in Iowa for the climactic ritual. Despite the uncertainty about where Emma came from, what is undeniable is that her descent into darkness began in adolescence. She reportedly began exhibiting terrifying symptoms, an aversion to sacred objects like crucifixes and holy water, deeply disturbing thoughts, and a bizarre inability to even step foot inside a church. It was as if an invisible force was pulling her away from all that was holy, but the symptoms didn't stop there. According to multiple accounts, including a detailed report published in 1935, Emma also began engaging in unspeakable sexual acts. These behaviors, considered scandalous and unexplainable by the standards of the time, alarmed everyone around her. The spiritual explanation soon took root: she was under the influence of something deeply evil. And the origin of that evil? Many believe it was passed down to her by blood. All fingers pointed to one woman, her own Aunt Mina. Locals whispered that Mina was a practicing witch, feared in her community for her dark arts. It was said she would curse the herbs and ingredients she cooked with, infusing them with spells designed to corrupt and control. But the darkness didn't stop there. Mina was allegedly also her brother-in-law's lover, Emma's father. This incestuous relationship, mixed with sorcery, created a spiritual breeding ground for demonic forces to take hold of young Emma's soul. Whether it was Mina's witchcraft, her father's sins, or a complex combination of both, one thing became chillingly clear: Emma was no longer in control of herself. Something, many believed, someone, had taken over. And soon, Father Reisinger would be called upon again. This time, not for a quick prayer or minor spiritual aid, but for the most harrowing battle of his priestly life. It was June 18, 1912. In the quiet corners of Des Moines, Iowa, a storm was about to break loose, not one of thunder or rain, but a spiritual tempest. Father Theophilus Reisinger, a Bavarian-born Capuchin priest and a seasoned exorcist, had been entrusted with an extraordinary task by Bishop Thomas Dunn, to confront the darkness tormenting a woman known to the world as Emma Schmidt. The first exorcism was shrouded in mystery. Few details survived, and what little was documented suggested only that Emma, tormented and fragile, was momentarily free from her affliction. But the silence that followed wasn't peace, it was merely the calm before a much darker storm. For over 2 decades, Emma vanished from public knowledge, but evil doesn't forget. By the summer of 1928, Emma's condition had taken a terrifying turn. Her behavior had become violently erratic, her eyes wild with rage, and her body racked with torment that defied any natural explanation. Once again, Father Reisinger was called. But this time, he wouldn't face the battle alone. His friend, Father Joseph Steiger of Ulling, Iowa, proposed a more discreet and sacred setting, a convent owned by the Franciscan sisters in the small town of Ulling. It was August 17th when Emma arrived at the convent, hidden from the public eye, veiled in secrecy, and already writhing under the weight of her possession. The moment the exorcism began on August 18th, all semblance of normalcy shattered. The convent, once a place of peace and quiet devotion, transformed into a battlefield between heaven and hell. Emma hissed like a wildcat, thrashed uncontrollably, and flew into violent fits, especially when food was unknowingly sprinkled with holy water. Her body contorted, levitated, and on more than one occasion, she clung to door frames like a spider, defying both gravity and logic. The first session lasted until August 26th. But that was just the beginning. A second session was held between September 13th and 20th. And then a third, an 8-day ordeal from December 15th to December 23rd, 1928, would push everyone to the brink. Emma's physical body began to deteriorate rapidly. She refused food, vomiting not just bile but putrid debris that resembled rotting tobacco leaves. Her face, lips, and eyes swelled grotesquely. Even more chilling was her sudden ability to speak languages she had never studied, Latin, German, Hebrew, switching between them as though possessed by scholars, demons, and ancient voices. The horror of what unfolded left many of the convent's nuns emotionally shattered. Some begged to be transferred, unable to endure the relentless assault of screams, foul odors, and Emma's unnatural strength. The very air inside the convent grew heavy, charged with a malevolent presence that threatened to suffocate even the strongest of faith. But perhaps most shocking of all were the identities the demons claimed to possess her. Among them, Judas Iscariot, the ultimate betrayer, Jacob, her own father, who had, according to the confessions wrung from her tormented soul, cursed her through incestuous lust and blasphemous rituals performed with his mistress, Emma's own Aunt Mina. Her voice would morph, at times, into a high falsetto that Reisinger believed was the voice of Mina herself, mocking, seductive, and filled with hate. Then came December 23rd. The final confrontation. Father Reisinger stood over Emma's convulsing body, invoking the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He called upon the intercession of the Virgin Mary. With unwavering authority, he commanded the demons to flee back into the fires of hell. Emma shrieked the names, Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina. Her voice filled with agony, then rage, and finally despair. Hell! Hell! Hell, she screamed, until suddenly, silence. And then, a soft voice, unmistakably her own, "My Jesus, mercy. Praised be Jesus Christ." The room exhaled. It was over. Reisinger's exorcism was deemed a success. Though minor episodes of possession would occasionally return, Emma was never again consumed by such pure evil. Her real name remained hidden for years, her life a mystery to the outside world. Emma Schmidt, forever remembered as the woman who survived one of the most terrifying exorcisms in recorded history, died on July 23, 1941, at the age of 59. Others claim her true name was Hulda Emma Schmidt, and that she lived until 1964. But one thing is certain, what happened in that convent in 1928 was not folklore. It was a spiritual war, one that left scars on everyone who dared to witness it. The story of Anna Eklund, once whispered only in hushed tones among clergy and nuns, did not fade into obscurity. Instead, it left behind a shadow that stretched into the decades that followed. Her terrifying ordeal became one of the most documented cases of demonic possession in the 20th century, inspiring books, newspaper reports, theological debates, and eventually, cinema. In 2016, the horror genre took another chilling turn when The Exorcism of Anna Eklund, a British-produced film, hit screens. While dramatized and fictionalized, the movie was rooted in the raw essence of her story, the grotesque, the unexplainable, and the spiritually horrifying. It captured the public's imagination, reigniting conversations about the fine line between faith and fear, psychology and possession, science and the supernatural. The film used the iconic moments from her 1928 exorcism, the vomiting of nails, levitation, and the guttural growls of inhuman voices, turning her suffering into haunting cinema. But that was just the beginning. In 2025, nearly a century after the infamous exorcism, a new film titled The Ritual was released. Unlike previous interpretations, The Ritual took a darker, more visceral approach. This wasn't just a retelling, it was a plunge into the abyss of what Anna Eklund experienced. Backed by intense historical research, real Catholic rituals, and chilling special effects, the movie blurred the line between documentary and horror. Audiences were shaken. Many viewers reportedly walked out during key scenes, unable to stomach the intensity of what they were seeing. Critics called it the most disturbing exorcism film of the decade, and theologians commented on its frightening accuracy. It was no longer just entertainment, it was a reawakening of one of the darkest spiritual battles ever recorded. But why does Anna Eklund's story still matter? Because her case remains an unsolved spiritual mystery. Was she truly possessed by demons like Judas Iscariot, Beelzebub, and her own corrupt relatives? Or was she a victim of deep psychological trauma and religious fanaticism? Even modern experts struggle to explain how a woman could speak in ancient languages she had never learned, react violently to holy objects she couldn't see, or vomit physical items like tobacco leaves and metal. No matter the answer, her legacy continues to echo in our world, a world where the line between the spiritual and the physical, the holy and the unholy, may be thinner than we think. Today, the Franciscan convent in Elling, Iowa, remains a quiet, peaceful place. But those who know its history say that on some nights, when the wind howls just right, you can still hear the echoes of shrieks and Latin prayers carried on the breeze. A reminder that what happened there was real. And whether you believe it or not, Anna Eklund's story has already crossed into legend, etched not only in books and film, but in the annals of spiritual warfare itself. So, the next time you hear a strange sound in the dead of night, or feel an unexplainable chill in your spine, remember Anna. Some battles aren't fought with weapons, but with faith. And some scars aren't visible on the skin, but buried deep in the soul.